All right, people. Today I'm going to show you what I found out with a 2012 Hyundai Elantra. This is a limited edition, but that shouldn't matter. The airbags light was on no matter what. Like the airbags weren't turning on, and the cruise control stopped working. And I replaced this whole unit here for the cruise control, and thinking that was the issue, and it didn't solve it. And then underneath, behind the brake pedal, they say that the brake switch, when you press down on the brake, it connects to a switch, and if that was bad, then your cruise control wouldn't work. And it wasn't that. It took tons and tons and tons of research, and then just stumbling across a mechanic who had done a video on YouTube, and it was not easy to find. I mean, I looked for months trying to figure out what the problem was, and somehow stumbled across this video where this guy had taken apart the steering wheel, and he was messing with the clock spring, and he was talking about the clock spring, and how he ended up splicing into with a tester into the wires of the clock spring, and trying it with the steering wheel just like barely screwed on. He was trying to drive it down the road just a little bit by his shop, and he found that when he bypassed one of the wires, that it ended up, the cruise control ended up working. So then he discovered that it was in fact the clock spring, and no one else I've seen anywhere says that that's the problem. So behind the steering wheel, when you take it off, this is the clock spring. This is the new one, mind you, but the old one looked like this, and something went bad with the wiring in it. So once you replace this clock spring, put the steering wheel back on, and connect these wires in the back into the clock spring, and then back into the airbag that goes on top of that, it ends up working perfectly. And the airbag lights warning that it wasn't working went off, so the airbag was working, and the front airbag was, the passenger airbag, the front airbag on the steering wheel would work. Before they wouldn't work, because the clock spring was powering all that, and it was wrong. It was broken. So if you discover that your cruise control stops working, then this is probably the problem, and this is probably like around a $30-some part. So it's pretty inexpensive, and you can easily do it yourself to replace. But do not take it to a mechanic and let them charge you hundreds of dollars to look around and still not find the issue. It will be the clock spring if your cruise control stops working. So, word to the wise. Hope this helps. If anybody comes across this problem with their Hyundai Elantra or any other vehicle that might have a clock spring back here, then that would be the problem with your cruise control not working. One thing you will want to make sure you do in taking off the steering wheel, once you unscrew the bolt, or the nut from this bolt, you're gonna make sure that you take like a black marker, make like a line, make sure your steering wheel is straight as it can possibly be before you take it off. Make a line with a black permanent marker like here, and then go down the side to the side of the inner ring on the steering wheel column, to make sure that when you put it back on, you're aligning that as right up with it, so that the steering wheel isn't crooked when you're driving straight. Not that it's going to be that big of a deal, but it'll be off. Your steering wheel will be off, and it won't be straight up and down center. So make sure that you make some sort of line, so that when you line this back up, that it goes on there correctly. And it's more of a wiggle back and forth on both sides of the steering wheel, hand on each side, and you gotta wiggle to get it off the bolt here, and you'll have to do the same thing to get it back on. You'll kind of find that little groove, because there's small little grooves, and you just wiggle that steering wheel back on, and then you can kind of tap it down when it gets to that point, and then just put your bolt your nut back on and tighten it down. And then reconnect these to the airbag and snap it back on and you're done. Easy peasy.